Good afternoon, and I have a bit of a cold today, so I want to thank everyone for coming. Senator Shaheen, Murphy, and Cortez, Masto. In our caucus room today, there was a lot of anger, frustration, deep disappointment in our Republican colleagues. For months, from this very spot, this podium, right here, we heard Republicans over and over again say the border is an urgent crisis. They called it an emergency. They said it must be fixed. However, yesterday, within 24 hours of releasing the long-awaited bipartisan compromise that our Republican colleagues demanded as condition to move Ukraine forward, Leader McConnell and the Republican conference did a 180-degree reversal. They were quaking at the knees at the fear of Donald Trump. If there's two words that describe why this, one of the most important pieces of legislation to come before us in a very long time, failed, it is Donald Trump. And second, it's the inability of Republican congressmen and senators to resist his bullying, even though they know he's wrong. Even though they know he's wrong. It's a bad moment for the Republic. I mean, how could you negotiate with people like this? We tried. That's my job. I always believe in bipartisanship. But first, they say they can't pass Ukraine funding without border provisions. Now, they can't pass Ukraine funding with border provisions. Well, which one is it? As I have said, the bill doesn't do everything we Senate Democrats would have wanted, but it's a bipartisan bill. It was a fair and long attempt led by Senators Murphy and Sinema and Langford to come up with a compromise that both sides could accept. And if you think this is some kind, you listen to the right-wing media, they say, oh boy, this is just a concoction by liberal Democrats. Well, the Wall Street Journal editorial page, the fount of conservative thinking, supported the bill. The president of the Border Patrol Council, who almost inevitably sides with Donald Trump, said pass the bill. The Chamber of Commerce, whose head is very close to Trump, said pass the bill. Any objective observer who cares about this country, its security, its future, said pass the bill. But not our Republican colleagues. Not our Republican colleagues. They kept moving the dates back. Just get it done by Christmas. Oh, at Christmas we need more time. Lindsey Graham said we need a delay at Christmas and get the president involved. We delayed till Christmas. We got the president involved. Still voting no. Still voting no. And if in December, Senator Fisher said, Democrats only support international aid, but they won't support his basic border security. We are told that our own border security is not related to this national security. That's absurd. We agreed with her. We needed it. No vote. And they're all voting no even on the motion to proceed. They don't even want to debate border. They don't even want to debate Ukraine and aid to Israel and humanitarian aid to the Palestinians. When President Trump came along and said he didn't want to solve the border problem, that he wanted it as a campaign issue, Speaker Johnson obediently changed his tune. Because you may remember, with our appropriations bills, for example, we were going to marry that to border security. He said, those are two things that are going to be handled together. That was Johnson. Now he says they should be separate. So, I'd like to address some of the Republican claims right here, right now. They want amendments to go on the bill. We'll give you amendments. They want some time. Go on the bill. We can spend time debating it. But vote no says you don't even want to debate or move forward on the bill. It's a rejection totally that flies in the face of what the American people want. Totally. They wanted 72 hours. Many of the people who signed the letter saying, give us 72 hours, came out against the bill long before the 72 hours was up. So, to the Republicans, we'll give you amendments. We will give you some time. Stay here as long as it takes. We feel it's so important. But go on the bill. Vote yes, and we can debate. I yield to Senator. Yes.
Well, like Senator Schumer and my colleagues on the Democratic side of the aisle, I'm very frustrated by what we've seen from our Republican colleagues. I'm proud to support this national security supplemental package, and I'm here to talk about Ukraine, but I just want to make one more point before I talk about why this is so critical to Ukraine, and that is one of the provisions in the border security piece has to do with fentanyl interdiction. Actually, there are several pieces that have to do with fentanyl interdiction. Now, I don't know about my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, but in the state of New Hampshire, we have lost too many people because they have died from fentanyl overdoses. And anything that we can do to cut down on the amount of fentanyl that's coming into the United States, we ought to be doing, by God. And if they're not willing to do that, shame on them. The fact is, America's life expectancy has gone down because of drug overdoses, largely because of the impact of fentanyl. So I don't know how anybody can stand up and say they're going to oppose our efforts to keep fentanyl out of this country and go back to their voters with a straight face and say it doesn't affect our national security and it doesn't affect the ability of Americans to live their lives in safety. Now, providing aid for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan, along with humanitarian assistance for the people of Gaza and for other vulnerable populations, is what's in this bill. And it sends a strong message that America stands on the side of freedom and democracy and against dictators and terrorists. If signed into law, it will provide Ukraine with the necessary aid to continue its war against Putin, a fight for freedom which Ukraine must win. The Europeans got their act together last week. They provide $54 billion in aid to Ukraine. Well, it's time America gets its act together. It's been nearly 2 years since Putin's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine. And thanks to the bravery and sacrifice of the Ukrainian people, a sovereign and democratic Ukraine stands today. But if we don't act quickly, all the battles they've won, all the land they've reclaimed, all the progress they've made to win back their country could be undone. Right now, Ukraine has just 20% of the ammunition and artillery it needs as Russia is advancing. How America responds to Putin today will determine the strength of tomorrow's autocrats. When dictators are not held accountable for their aggression, their threat to the world continues. Under Putin, Russia has deepened their ties with Iran, with North Korea, and the People's Republic of China. Up to 85% of Russia's missiles are now foreign-made, and Iran supplies 70% of Russia's drone capabilities. These are the drones that are terrorizing Ukraine. And if we fail to support Ukraine, we will only embolden Iran and its proxies further. So for all of my Republican colleagues who have been screaming about Iran and screaming about China, what they're going to do if they fail to fund Ukraine is to embolden the People's Republic of China and embolden Iran and embolden North Korea. Because, make no doubt about it, Beijing will be emboldened to take even more provocative actions towards Taiwan. We heard from the Taiwanese ambassador to the U.S. recently, who said that Ukraine's success in defending itself with the help of the United States is the most important message for deterring an invasion of Taiwan. So let's be very clear. Putin is not just waging war against Ukraine. If he's not stopped in Ukraine, there's no telling where he goes next. It could be into a NATO country. That would invoke Article 5, and it would send our soldiers to fight in Europe. You know, the modern-day Republican Party, the party of Ronald Reagan, was built on standing up to our Soviet adversaries. But MAGA Republicans are willing to put at risk our national security to let Ukraine fail simply because they think it will help their nominee, preferred presidential candidate, former President Trump, in November. That's spineless and it's wrong. The bipartisan supplemental funding agreement will follow through on our promise to stand by our friends in Ukraine. We must not abandon Ukraine now. We must not deny them the resources and tools and the weapons they need to defeat Putin once and for all.
So, listen, I know that it's easy to lose your sense of outrage about politics. I know that it's easy to lose your sense of outrage if you've spent a lot of time in this building. But what has happened here over the last 4 months is outrageous. It is outrageous that last fall Republicans decided to play games with the security of the world and say that they wouldn't support funding for Ukraine, even though on the merits they supported it, unless we packaged it together with bipartisan immigration reform. It is doubly outrageous for them to now oppose the very bill that they begged us to craft. A group of us spent 4 months working every day, through the holidays, through the weekends, to satisfy the demands that Republicans made. We followed the Republican instructions on how to get a bipartisan border deal and how to get aid to Ukraine unlocked. And within 24 hours of unveiling that agreement, they abandoned bipartisan border reform and Ukraine for one reason, because Donald Trump asked them. They looked at a border reform package that would have gotten control of the border, that would have fixed the crisis at the border. And Republicans decided that they would be better off preserving chaos at the border as an election issue instead of solving the problem. I guess it's the negotiators' fault. We crafted a bill that was too effective. We reached a compromise that would actually fix the problem. And as it turns out, Republicans don't want to fix the problem. They want to leave the issue of immigration open as a political agenda item to exploit. So I don't think people should lose their outrage at what has just happened. One of my colleagues just a moment ago said that this is maybe the most dispiriting week that he has had since he came to Washington. It's dispiriting not just because we had a chance to solve a problem, the problem of the border. It's not just dispiriting that Americans are going to be outraged at the fact that this issue is going to remain open again as another election issue when we had a chance to come together and solve it. But it's also dispiriting because there did used to be a difference between the Senate Republican caucus and the House Republican caucus. There is no difference anymore. They are just as dysfunctional. They are just as tied to President Trump. And that's a sad day for the United States Senate. So I think all of us are grasping for the path forward here. I think it's important to have the vote tomorrow so the American people can see, where do you stand? Do you want to fix the border, or do you want to keep the border a mess in order to help Donald Trump?
Thank you. I have to, first of all, thank Leader Schumer, Senator Murphy, and Senator Shaheen for the great work and being here today, and all of my colleagues. Let me just say this. Let me bring this home a little bit. I was just at the border. It was not my first time at the border, but I was in the Tucson sector. It's 262 miles of border, and it is probably the busiest and most dangerous. And I met with the customs agents down there. I met with ICE. I met with the Border Patrol agents. And I will tell you, everything that we talked about was put into this supplemental package, what they need, based on the conversations that we've had. It gives us resources to hire more Border Patrol agents who right now are overwhelmed and understaffed, to hire more customs officers, to find and fund new cutting-edge technology to, yes, address the trafficking of fentanyl and other drugs that are coming in to the United States, to address the human trafficking that is happening on the border, and yes, to absolutely address what we see happening with immigration, to put in process an orderly and fair process. It updates our asylum system that isn't working for immigration families. Think about this, an asylum system that is old. It is old. It hasn't been updated for the 21st century. It is now, we have put in place the opportunity to address years of challenges with the asylum process, now to put in place a fair process for anyone, a faster process, and gives due process to those individuals. The legislation also creates 250,000 new visas to help reunite families and encourage legal immigration. Is there more work to be done to fix our broken immigration system? Absolutely, absolutely. But this bill is an important first step. Doing nothing is not the answer. At the same time, passing this bill will get vital aid to our partners in Ukraine, in Israel, and Taiwan, as you've heard from my colleagues, while delivering humanitarian assistance to innocent Palestinian civilians. Let me just say this. Why shouldn't we secure our border, along with providing aid to other allies who want to secure their border? Why are my Republican colleagues refusing to do just that? For months, Republicans have said that we need to secure our border, as you have heard over and over again. You walk the halls, you know this, more so than the American public, the people in my town and across this country. But what we all know is they have always had an excuse. I will be the first to say I was cynical. I thought when we started this process, there's no way we're going to get Republicans on board, because they don't want to solve this problem. They want to use it for campaign purpose. They want to be beholden to former President Trump. They'd rather serve him than the American public. I was cynical. But I'll tell you what, a group came together. They worked on legislation to address the border, amongst other things, and they put that text out. Is it perfect? No. Is it everything that we all want? No. But does it address what I heard from those agents at the border and what we want to do in this country and our asylum process to ensure that we have an orderly process and we actually address issues dealing with migrant families? Absolutely. And that's why you have seen the Border Patrol Union supports this legislation. The American Immigration Lawyers Association has recognized this as an important first step that we need to take. So I do not understand now why my Republicans refuse to support this, other than going back to my initial cynicism, which is they don't want to. They want something to campaign on during this campaign, and they'd rather serve former President Trump. Let me say one final thing, because I think many of my colleagues, we're all outraged by this turnaround. And the fact that some of my colleagues on the far right would rather play politics with this issue than actually solve problems for the American public. Because I can tell you in my state, they want us to solve problems. We see the fentanyl coming in. Nevada's not a border state, but we see the issues bleeding across into Nevada from the fentanyl trafficking, from the human trafficking. We want to solve these problems, and we need partners to do so. When I was down at the border talking to the Border Patrol agents, I was at the Lukeville station. They were so pleased that any senator would come down there to talk with them and listen, that one of the agents gave me, and if you know anything about challenge coins, this is something that is very significant for our officers, whether you're in the military or law enforcement. And this agent said, Senator Masto, I want you to have this. I want you to not only take this, because this shows your support for who we are and what we do every day and allowing us just to do our jobs, but I'm giving you a second one because I want you to give the second one to one of your colleagues who supports us as well. I will tell you, unfortunately today, not one of my Republican colleagues is getting this. And if they do have one that is sitting in their office, then they better be talking to their Border Patrol agents why they're not supporting this legislation. Actually, at the end of the day, why they do not have their backs. There's too much at stake. It's time to stop playing games. American public want us to do the right thing here. We have a Biden-Harris administration that has put forth the support for this. There should be support for this in a bipartisan way, and let's stop playing politics with people's lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.
Mr.
Yes.
Are you concerned that if you aren't able to marshal a bill like this, which everyone agrees is a problem that needs to be addressed, that any sort of bipartisan legislation that you need to work on has any chance of passing in the future?
Look, we feel this is so important for the security of America at the border, for the security of Ukraine and Israel. We're going to keep at it. This is not the last Republicans will hear from us. We're going to keep at it. We will have a vote tomorrow. We will move further forward. Stay tuned. Room. Go ahead.
Do you believe there is anything right now that President Biden can do via executive order to help secure the border?
Look, we've been through this before. He's doing everything he can on executive order, but many of the things that people say he can do by executive order are immediately thrown out by the courts. Our Republican leaders at times have all said we need legislation. Broom. Hometown newspaper, come on. Well, the bottom line is we always have. I've been trying to do something on immigration since I led the Gang of Eight in 2013. But you've had a total change with the Republican Party. Reagan was for immigration reform. H.W. was for immigration reform. W. was for immigration reform. I worked with them on all of it. We came damn close in 2013 where we got a lot of House people to be for it, but the Republican Tea Party in the House said no. As long as Donald Trump is president, it seems, by what happened yesterday, the Republicans, even though they know we have to do something, and even though the Chamber of Commerce and the Border Patrol and the Wall Street Journal editorial page said before it, they just don't have the backbone, the guts, the spine to resist the blandishments of Trump, even when they know he's wrong. Yes.
Leader McConnell said just now that you should repackage the foreign aid provisions as a supplemental and move forward with just that.
As I said, we are going to vote on the bill tomorrow, the bill that's been for us. We're going to move further forward. Stay tuned.
The Speaker has said that House Republicans were essentially shut out of these talks. Senators told them to essentially they'll deal with their own Senate product and not include that.
Well, the wisdom of what we did is shown that Speaker Johnson has just listened to Donald Trump time in, time out, and there'd be no bill if Speaker Johnson continued to listen to President Trump, and that's all he's done.
Leader Schumer,
yes.
Have you have a plan for what would happen if Secretary Mayorkas is impeached in the House for how the Senate would deal with that?
Let's see what the House first does.
I mean, that's my question.
Let's see what the House first does.
Would you move to dismiss it? Would you move to dismiss?
Let's just see what the House first does.
When you say that you would allow amendments, that open amendments process?
We'll have a fair amendment process, and I promise that. And no leader. I did more in my 2 years as majority leader. We did more amendments than under the 4 years of the Trump administration. So I think my record shows I'm open to amendments. Thank you, everybody.